All right. All right, well, welcome everyone. My name is Amber Carla Salgueiro, and I'm the director of the Assembly Fellowship Program. This is a day in the life of a fellow workshop that we're going to be having today. I'm going to go ahead and let all of our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll just jump into the discussion. So we can start with Aldo, please.
Hi, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here in my capacity as an alumni of the Assembly Fellowship Program specifically. I'm happy to answer any questions for all of you. I'm really excited to share about my experience and why I think that applying to this program is absolutely to the benefit of anyone who's interested in public policy.
Great, Steve.
Hi, everyone. Steve Dorsey, outgoing Senate Fellow. Looking forward to answering any questions you all might have on the program and, of course, the day in the life.
Thank you, Nikki.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki. I just finished the program a few months ago in July, and I was a Judicial Fellow in the last cohort. And I'm excited to be here and chat with all of you.
Mariah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mariah. I'm a former executive fellow from the last cohort, and I'm excited to talk to you all.
Great. And then our wonderful staff, Jamie and Jenna.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you very much, Amber. Welcome for those who are interested in the Capital Fellows Program. It inspires me to see that the future is bright with your participation in public service. Welcome and thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I'm the Executive Fellowship Program Coordinator. I'm also our site administrator on SurveyMonkey Apply. So if you're having any issues, just hit that little send the administrator an email and I will get it and help you out.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to attempt to share my screen. All right. Let's see. Sorry, guys, I should have started a slideshow before. All right. So I'll just do a quick overview of the fellowship programs, and then we'll have our former fellows speak, because I know they're the main attraction here today. So for those of you who don't know, the Capital Fellows programs are 4 programs that place recent college graduates, or really anyone with a college degree, in the branches of government in California. So we have programs in both legislative houses, the Assembly and the Senate, the judicial branch, and also the executive branch. Okay. The minimum qualifications, as I mentioned, you do have to have a bachelor's degree in any major, and I do want to stress any major because all majors are welcome. I think it's a misconception that you need to be a political science major. We welcome, scientists, engineers, any expertise that you have outside of government is actually very useful in this program. There is a minimum GPA requirement of 2.5. You do need to be 20 years old by September 1st of the fellowship year. And we are not able to accommodate F1 or J1 visas, but we are able to work with folks that are DACA eligible. The fellows do receive a monthly stipend of $3,253. You do receive health, vision, and dental benefits. You are available to get student loan deferments. We do provide regional transportation in the Sacramento area for free. And you do also receive 6 graduate units from Sacramento State University and a certificate. These are graduate units, I should add, and a graduate certificate in applied government when you successfully complete the program. Our Fast Facts, we are a nationally recognized program. I'm a former fellow myself, and I think you'll find when you leave the fellowship and start your career or attend graduate school, you will run into a slew of former fellows in higher education and throughout, the job market. Again, we do have academic seminar that is taught by Sacramento State faculty. It is a graduate level seminar. I attend that with the fellows, and I'll tell you, it's an in-depth look at government, and I think it's very helpful for fellows because you're doing the work and then you're also learning the theory behind sort of what you see day to day. So I think academic seminar is an interesting part of the program. It's held Friday afternoons, and you're excused from your day job as a fellow in order to attend seminar. The fellows are placed in the Sacramento area, with the exception of the Judicial Fellowship, because they are placed in courthouses statewide. A few other facts, who can apply, really anyone that it meets the interests and qualifications of the program. We are looking for people, as Jamie mentioned, that are passionate about public policy. We're looking for California's future leaders. And so if you have a passion for the state and for public service, this is the program for you. We encourage fellows from all backgrounds to apply. We want a fellowship class that is as diverse as the people of California, and we are one of the most diverse places on earth. And so we welcome all walks of life, and we really value diversity in experience and geography and background and basically any kind of diversity that you can have, we welcome. We have recent graduates. We accept people with graduate degrees. We have people that are mid-career that want to change and have an entryway into government. And this program is the best way to do that. So it doesn't need to be for recent college graduates. Anyone that is interested in state government can apply. We also welcome all party affiliations. We do in the Senate and the Assembly, we do place by party because we are, a political fellowship. And so Republicans will be placed in Republican offices and Democrats are placed in Democratic offices. And so we encourage, people of all political philosophies to apply. And again, you do need to meet the minimum qualifications to be considered. Our timeline, our applications are open now. So please, if you're interested, please start applying now. Our applications are due December 4th at midnight. I really encourage you to apply before that day because you might find that you have trouble hitting submit and you can have your computer could crash, anything can happen. So please do try and apply before December 4th. We will interview in late February, early March. These interviews are typically either in person or via Zoom. We notify applicants of their status in late March, and then the fellowship begins in the fall. The Judicial Fellows begin a bit earlier than the other programs. They believe they begin in September, and the Executive, Senate, and Assembly all begin in October. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Aldo to talk about the Assembly Fellowship Program.
Thank you so much, Amber, for that brief overview of the application process. Again, my name is Aldo Javier Garcia. I just finished the Assembly Fellowship Program as of the 22nd of September. And interestingly enough, actually, a year ago today was the first day that all of us met in person across the different programs. So it's definitely full circle to be here and be able to share my experience as an Assembly Fellow. I definitely want to emphasize that this program is for anyone who's interested in public service. I think it's definitely fair to say that even in my experience, I grew up in the Central Valley, a very small town, and I had an idea that I liked public service, but I didn't necessarily think that I could actually make it here one day. So when I went through the application process, it was definitely, gathering my materials, making sure that I did my essays, but I was really able to share my story and kind of like why public service was what I wanted to do in the future. And all of that was really tied to like going back to who I was when I grew up in my community, right? So I didn't necessarily have any like huge background in public policy, but the program definitely was able to put me in the position where now, after a year later, I'm confident to say that this is exactly the place that I want to be at. So as an Assembly Fellow, if anyone has like any kind of reservation about whether they should be applying or not, again, I had no experience in Sacramento, and to be completely honest with you, I didn't learn how to tie my first tie until I was like in March of the fellowship. So if you already know how to tie a tie, you're already ahead of the game, and you definitely should apply. One of the reasons why this fellowship program was so appealing was because as a first generation student, I thought that first generation was just in relation to education. After I graduated from Berkeley, I knew that first generation also meant first generation even in the space in the legislature. So I needed, if I was going to come to Sacramento, I needed a program that was going to grab my hand, help me lift up, come to Sacramento, and prepare me to be in this space. And the Assembly Fellowship and all of the other programs definitely do that. After you do the interview process and you get accepted, they provide a stipend for you to move over to Sacramento. So a relocation stipend. They help you find housing. When we got here in October, between October and December, it was a lot of just basically kind of going over like the legislative process, not actually being placed in an office, but getting the familiarizing yourself with the folks you're going to be working with, the committees, the space, Sacramento in general. And by the time that you're placed in your office, you know exactly what it is you're going to be doing in your capacity as a fellow. Now it's just time to be able to put that into practice. And so this was an experience that I have never had before. And what I mean by that is that we're actually put in the office doing critical work on behalf of the assembly member. So I always like to break it up into like my day or what I do as a fellow into two main parts. One, we're personal staff to the member. We carry legislation for the member. So this year, thankfully, I was able to staff the member on 7 different pieces of legislation. Thankfully, I was able to get 2 that were just signed by the governor and 1 that was chaptered by the governor's budget, is chaptered in the governor's budget as well. So just to give you an example, when we started in December, and the legislative process is like a calendar year, right? So we start introducing bills in January, and hopefully by October, that's when your bills are signed, and maybe even sooner. So from the very beginning, my member, for example, was like, although I am interested in this issue area, I want to do one bill on this. From that point on, I was able to meet with the right people in the space, ask questions, and see how we can actually solve that issue. So from the very beginning, I was able to kind of, from the inception of the idea, meet with people, create the actual bill, and then carry the entire bill through the process. So from the point that the bill was an idea to when we introduced it, to when it went through its policy committees, to when it was actually voted on by the assembly floor and then sent over to the Senate. Once the bill was introduced, that is like our baby, and we have to take care of it and do everything that we can to get it to the governor's desk. That was one part of it. The other aspect of the work that we do is, of course, some of the issue areas that I staffed the member on were local government, natural resources, water, higher education, a mix of things that I was interested in, but also a few things that I had no experience in. And so I was able to really kind of dive into what some of these conversations look like for some of these issues. And I was able to analyze bills, keep track of them, and even give the member a recommendation based on what I believed in. And so my experience was absolutely wonderful working with Assemblymember Lori Wilson and her team. All of them were gracious enough to provide solid mentorship, the confidence for me to be able to do this work that others have been doing for years. And anytime I asked a question, they were there to answer it as well. And so there wasn't any moment where I felt like I was just kind of thrown into the deep end. In the beginning, the program definitely gives you your floaties, teaches you how to swim. And then from that point on, you do the whole work as well. One of the really exciting things about the program as well is that a lot of the work that we do in Sacramento, you work from 9 to 5, your typical work day, and then after there's a lot of receptions and a lot of networking. So another part of that was also just mingling with folks. And if you were interested in one specific issue area, you could kind of talk to some of the folks in the housing space or some of the folks in the water space, and just more doors continuously are opening, right? So even towards the end of the fellowship, I know I'm going to be staying in the assembly for another year, but I could say that I was overwhelmed, and it was like a good sense of being overwhelmed because there was just so many roads available after the fellowship, and because of the network and because of the mentorship and the staff and just the work that I was able to do, that in the end there was so many options for me. And it was just, for me, I knew that staying in the assembly, I want to learn more, and I want to dive more into the policies as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions towards the end during the Q&A, but I want to make sure I have the opportunity for other folks to share about their experience as well.
Thank you so much, Aldo. All right, we'll turn it over to the Senate.
Hi, everyone. In respect for the time, although he covered a lot about kind of the similarities and overlap between the programs, but I kind of want to start with just your presence in this meeting. If you're here, I think you're considering, I want to do something where I make a difference. And I can wholeheartedly say that applying for this program will put you in a position to make a difference in 44 million people's lives. because that's what it comes down to. For me personally, I studied psychology. So kind of like Amar was saying in the beginning, I had no really inclination to typical political science. I did some leadership in undergrad and a bit of work with, my local officials, but to think I was gonna, move to Sacramento and do a program like this was never on my radar until I found out about, the degree of excellence in this program. And I knew I wanted to apply. Each one of the programs have something specific and amazing to offer. So for me, my experience was in the Senate program, and I can wholeheartedly tell you it has changed my life. Again, because it puts you in a position to make a difference. The thing about the Senate, I would say, so for the Assembly, there's 80 members. For the Senate, it's 40 members. So it's a bit smaller in that once, the rubber hits the road, you're you're talking to less people, and you really do have to leverage those relationships that you will build. One of the biggest things I'll also say about the fellowship is it is a nexus between theory and practice. The seminars you go through will equip you with every single tool you need, because at least for me, I came in feeling overwhelmed, partially because I didn't have any of that political science experience, but I can tell you after doing the seminar, you're equipped to handle anything you need to. And even if that's saying, I don't know, but you're equipped to find the resources and the people to point you in the direction of that information. So in all of the programs, you are equipped to do the work that you will eventually be doing, which is difficult, but it is difficult in the sense that it's helping and changing lives. You're going to get to touch pieces of legislation that, like Aldo was saying, I just got some notifications that a few of the bills we worked on were able to be chaptered. And it's monumental. I was filled with glee because we work with these pieces of legislation from conception to then potentially being signed. So I would definitely encourage you also apply for every program because each of them offer different tangible skills that you'll be able to add to your toolkit, which will make you a more civically engaged citizen, but also equip you with the tools again to make a difference in the lives of 44 million people. When it comes to specific questions, if you guys have that, I'll be happy to answer, especially on kind of the day-to-day nuances, because every day is different. I think we can all agree there was no day where it was the exact same, maybe end of session, but the only common denominator in end of session was that it was chaos. So that was really the only similarity. But yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys may have once that period opens up.
Thank you so much, Steve. We'll turn to Judicial.
That's me. Hi everyone. Again, my government name is Nicole, but I go by Nikki. And just to kind of echo what the other fellows and Amber kind of highlighted in the beginning was the importance of just because there's no specific pathway and perfect major into this program. And I think it's really special that so many other folks from different backgrounds kind of are able to come together and offer various kinds of insights. I studied sociology and women and gender studies in undergrad, didn't really touch political science at all, but I knew that I was interested in the courts, so I applied to this program. So the Judicial Fellows are a little bit different than the other programs. So the Judicial Fellows, there's only 10 of us, and I believe the other ones have 18. Yeah, okay, I'm seeing a lot of nods, thank you. My apologies for not knowing the number off the top of my head. And then also what's different is the other programs are all placed here in Sacramento, and the Judicial Fellows are placed throughout the state. So they're placed in various superior courts throughout the state, and also the Judicial Council of California, which is where I was placed. So the program itself is rooted in court administration and basically ensuring that the courts and justice remains accessible to all people. And that's something that I was very passionate about. And that's kind of what drew me to this program. And it's a lot about, and I honestly have through my 10 months working at the Judicial Council, I learned a lot about access to justice. And I think that outreach and my work there was really, it really just broadened my horizons about there's just a lot that people don't understand. So for example, a really hot issue in the judicial branch right now is the issue of the court reporter shortage. And I didn't realize how important it was to have a written record of your court proceeding, or else you can't go to court, you can't appeal. So that's something that, for example, is just an issue area that I had worked on at the Judicial Council. And one of the problem areas of something that's really, that the branch is very interested in right now. I also wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the work that judicial fellows do, and they deeply vary throughout your placement. So, and this could be because of location, and also, the kind of perspectives and work that your mentors would want you to do. So working at, Sacramento Superior Court is going to be a lot different than working in like LA Superior Court, because LA has, millions and millions of people that live there. So the issue areas there, and the things that they see in their court could be different than a smaller court. So that's really special. So I know during my cohort, some of the fellows had worked closely with like language access and ensuring that, if someone doesn't speak English, how are we going to ensure that they're able to understand the judge and the attorneys during their proceeding, because that is an access to justice issue. Or some of them worked closely with collaborative courts, and I can speak a little bit more about that, because that is always a really famous topic of how, to reduce recidivism and give folks successful entry back into society, once they've made a mistake. And what do veteran treatment courts look like? What does mental health treatment courts look like? How do we cater towards these populations and ensure that, we're creating a safer community for the whole, throughout the state? And how do we shift focus to ensuring that these people have the resources we need and they're able to successfully come back into society? So that's some of the work that the judicial fellows have done. So like Amber mentioned, there is the academic component, and we also had we had a field seminar once a month. So for the judicial fellows, these were very interesting, and I thought they were pretty insightful. We got to travel and go throughout the state. So during my cohort, we got to visit the San Bernardino Superior Court. We got to visit the Butte County Superior Court in Chico. And then we learned, a lot about courts in San Bernardino. Specifically, it was a lot about courts and data, and how are we, best serving our populations, and especially after COVID, how do we, transition to remote proceedings when someone can, hop on Zoom real quick for a proceeding. We also, my personal favorite, this was a couple months, I think it was this time last year, we got to visit the Third District Court of Appeal here in Sacramento. So that was really, really fun to watch and see. And then we also got to visit the federal court here in Sacramento as well. So that's just a little insight into what the academic and field seminars kind of look like as a judicial fellow. My experience was a little bit different because I was placed at the Judicial Council and I was not at a court. So the Judicial Council is the legislative body of the court. So I got to intersect with the legislature in that area, which was very, very interesting. My office specifically was the Governmental Affairs Office. And we basically advocated on behalf of the 58 superior courts and the Judicial Council for, advocated for, being a legislator on the needs of the branch throughout the state. And I do I know, because in the interest of time, I want to be mindful of that. But for this program, you have to create a fellowship project, which is a deliverable to your placement. And mine was a white paper on a Assembly Bill 1981, which was signed in 2021, which was which basically allowed a pilot program for 6 courts and to study jury compensation. I think jury duty. I'm probably one of the only people who would like really cares about jury duty and doesn't try to actively get out of it, but it's a democratic process in our courts, and I am very passionate about it. So basically, the bill would allow the Judicial Council to have 6 courts to raise the juror per diem to $100 per day. Again, access to justice. It's expensive to take off time off work to serve on jury duty. And my white paper really supported my professional growth. I got to take the lead on this project, and it did help me kind of grow professionally and supported me and to the position that I am now today. So that's just, wanted to do a little bump on the fellowship project. But yeah, happy to stick around and answer questions for the second part of this. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I just want to tell you, I was driving in my car the other day and I heard a story about that bill, and so that's something that will happen in this world. Things that you hear on the news, you are now working on and part of. So it's very, very exciting. So thank you for sharing that. All right. Last but definitely not least, executive fellowship.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mariah. I'm from the recent class of 2022-2023, and I was placed at the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. And so what's a little different about the executive fellowship from the Judicial, the Senate, and the Assembly is we're placed in an executive branch. And so there's hundreds all across the state, but we're all located in Sacramento. And so what's really great about this is you really get to pick where you want to go and what you're interested in. You do interviews with all of the different offices that would like to have a fellow, and you can pick from, I'm not kidding you, we had people like, I was in emergency services. We had the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, the Air Resources Board, like you name it, you can probably find a fellowship that will tailor to what you like. And so I think that's what's really great about this program is it really allows you to pick what you think you're interested in. And then from there, you learn that you're interested in so much more about it that you never thought you would get into. We also have seminar every Friday. I believe it's still going to be in the morning, which I thought was really nice because you could kind of, at least for me, I got to sleep in a little bit more to go to class, and then I would go to class to work, or sometimes I would say like, oh, we have a little bit longer seminar and you can get lunch with your cohort because it is around that same time. And since we're all placed in Sacramento, you really get to create, it's not just like a community, but it's more like a family that you get with your placement. And I'm sure that's true for all of them. You get so close because you're the only ones really experiencing this during this time, especially with what changes in the world. So you really latch on to each other and grow together and teach each other what you're learning at your different placements. And it was something I never thought I needed or exactly wanted to do. And now I love it. And I got a job at my placement. I'm from rural Northern California. And so coming to Sacramento, I came for Sac State. And so I was familiar with the area, but I wasn't really familiar with government and how to really get involved. It seemed very daunting and scary, especially because you're working for people who are making changes in California. You're interacting with the governor, you're interacting with the judicials, the courts, all of these members that you never like, they just seem so high up there, and now you're not at the same level, but you're having that interaction with them that I don't think you would get in any other program besides the Capital Fellows program. The executive one in particular, you really get to focus on different aspects of California. So with emergency services, you don't realize how much affects California on an emergency standpoint until you're activated on them and you're responding to them and you're trying to figure out how to best help Californians. And so when the earthquake happened in Turkey, I'm not sure if a lot of you knew, but we didn't, but California sent people from Los Angeles to Turkey to go respond and help. You don't really think about the effects that would have on state government and people. When there's earthquakes that happen in other countries, you have to think about how will that affect California? Will there be tsunamis? And so just different aspects that you don't really think about until you're in it. And so that's what I think is really great about the executive fellowship is you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. You have an interest, but you grow so much. And I definitely wouldn't say I'm the same person I was 9 months ago. I definitely think I've grown a lot. And yeah, I think that's my spiel. I know everybody kind of talked really general about theirs, but I think everybody's experience is really different when you get into it. And it really is what you make of it, depending on if you network after hours, if you work extra hours at your placement, if you get to work from home, because that's also is an option with the executive fellowship. Some branches do get to work from home. I was not one of them, unfortunately, but a lot of them did have that really nice hybrid environment.
Great, thank you so much. I'll just briefly put up the last slide with the reminder that our application is due on December 4th in the afternoon, in the evening. And again, if you would like to follow any of the programs on social media, our handles are all there, and you can kind of get an idea of what the fellows are up to during the year. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and open it up to participant questions. So if you have any questions, you can either put them in the chat, use the raise your hand feature, and we are happy to answer them. Okay. For the application link. So I need a brave soul to go first. Who wants to be the first to ask a question? Andy, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. So I kind of had a question about the Judicial Fellowship. So I was wondering, since you're distributed across like different placements across the state, is there like a lot of interaction with other Judicial Fellows at different placements? And like, if so, like, is it remote, or just kind of how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like I mentioned I mentioned earlier, you have academic and field seminar, which happens once a month. So both of those spaces are where the fellows come together. So I think like the last year, they finally had a lot more things in person, just kind of coming out of the pandemic. So I got to see my cohort once a month, and then we were a little different because our academic and field seminars got to be like we got to like put them all together. So for example, like we had SoCal fellows like Orange County, LA, San Bernardino, like they would fly up to like, or we would fly down wherever we were all meeting up. And then, so like if we were going to Sacramento, they would come in on Wednesday night and then stay throughout Friday. So we had like Thursday, Friday, like all together. And then also like the program sends out like the list of like travel for the Judicial Fellows like at the beginning, so you'll kind of have an idea of when you'll be out of town, or if you're like, so if it's your court that they're visiting, you're going to be like the host fellow, and you know it'll be your responsibility to like take around the fellows, or just be around your placement. So there's definitely like a monthly basis interaction, and like Mariah mentioned, like with my cohort, because we got to travel so often, we got very tight with one another and really close. And then also in the beginning of the program, so we start in September, there is like a few days to a week where it's just like introduction, and like I'm blinking on the word, but we spent the first week together to kind of like settle in and get to know each other, and then we were brought back into our placements. And then I should also mention that all the travel is included, so your flights like paid for and accommodations are paid for. And then if you're like a local fellow, so if you're just like in San Francisco and you're driving to Sacramento, like your mileage and things are paid for when the fellows all interact. And I also was placed in Sacramento, so I had the wonderful opportunity, like I've definitely have seen all these past fellows before. So, and we do like kind of make time to kind of like figure out when like as far as like travel and like coming together. So there'll be fellows like throughout like the state. So just because you're in SoCal doesn't mean you're there alone. There will be a fellow there as well. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for answering my question. That really helps.
I'll just briefly add on to that. We have a California Fellows Alumni Association, and I'm on the board of that. And one of the things that they do is they try to host mixers when we know the Judicial Fellows will be in town. And so they make a really concerted effort to do that. So we've had our opening mixer when the Judicial Fellows were folks, and we had a pizza party in the park when the Judicial folks were in town. So you are placed all over the state, but we all do our very best to make you feel like you're included in it, even though you're far away, you're still part of the family.
Got it. That's great to hear. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for your question. All right. Do we have any other questions? I didn't see anything come in the chat. No. Okay, well, we have 20 minutes left, but if we don't have any questions, I will let these, okay. Hi, Kit, yes.
Sorry, I just had a quick
No, please.
question related to the judicial fellowship, and I was wondering how the placement process works. Like, is it based on where you're already located, or do you like, select ones that you might prefer? Sorry,
Oh my gosh, these are really good questions. And I feel so bad that I didn't like mention all these really important details in like my beginning spiel. So, okay, we're a little different because if you get approved for the program, your placement's given to you. And then the way that they choose your placement is based on a ranking sheet. So if you get selected for an interview, there are 10 placements and you have to rank them all. So they do a really good job about kind of giving you like they do take into account, because some fellows can't leave. So if you're from Southern California and I don't know, let's say you're really rooted there and it would be really difficult like financially and like just emotionally for you to uproot your life and move somewhere else, like to Chico, then they definitely take that into account. So you're like to rank them like 1, 2, and 3. I think that my cohort, like during my year, they did a really good job at like giving people the placement that like higher ranking placements. And then so the committee that interviews you, that whole panel kind of decides where you'll be for the next 10 months. And like I know it sounds pretty daunting because you're not interviewing for your placement. Like they're just gonna hand it to you. Like Megan, who is our program director, has been doing this like for a while, and the folks on the panel really understand the program, so they really know. They know where you'll be the most happiest, and I think I can say for my year confidently, like I think everyone ended up in a placement they were happy with. So so you're given your placement if selected for the program.
That's great. Thank you. That really helps.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just quickly add, for the other 3 programs, the process is a little different than judicial, but it's similar amongst the 3 programs. In the Senate, the Assembly, and in the executive, you basically are given the applications of the department, the senator or the assembly member that has applied for a fellow. So it's actually a competitive process for these departments, senators, and assembly members. They want fellows. So they submit an application, the fellow receives that application, you read it, and then you get to select who you interview with. And I'll tell you, I've worked in private sector, public sector, government, and everything you can imagine. I've never had an experience where you get to pick who you work for in such a way. You basically have 50 members of the assembly applying for a fellowship, and you get to select which 15 or 20 you're going to interview with. And then similar to, I think, judicial, then we have a matching process where we take into account the fellow's preference, the senator, assembly member, or the department's preference, and then we try to match based on fit, based on interest, based on whatever is kind of important to the office and to the fellow. So it's a slightly different process, but I think it's similar in that we're looking to maximize your fellowship experience. So we want to put you in an office where you're working on the issues that you care about and you want to work on. And if your priorities are geography, or you really want to work for an urban member or a rural member, all of that is taken into account when we're placing. All right. Do we have any other questions? Jamie.
Yes, Amber, is it possible for you to maybe help or ask questions of since we've got these wonderful advocates for their individual programs, former fellows and from their individual programs, maybe talk about the day-to-day, a little bit more about what the day-to-day responsibilities are, kind of how they grew throughout the year, what they look back on now as basically simple processes that they've mastered or certainly know much better than when they started, kind of that growth pattern from start to end, and sort of the day-to-day in between would be helpful.
Absolutely, and I'll let them think about that quickly while I read one of the questions that we just got in the chat. So the question in the chat was, and so we'll circle back to him, it's a great question. In regards to the application essay, what was the process like for the fellows? And anyone can jump in.
Oh, I can start. So hi again, former executive fellow. I think the essay part, I took a year off in between graduating college and starting this fellowship. I graduated during the pandemic, so I feel like I just needed a year to like breathe and work and figure it out. So it kind of like put me back in that school mindset. And I really enjoyed the application process just because you really had to think about what you wanted out of the fellowship, like what you were looking for. Why did you feel that you should become a fellow? What did you hope to gain? How did you hope to represent your community or who you identify with? And so for me, it was like, it kind of put me back and I really enjoyed school. And so I kind of enjoyed the application process. The waiting to see if you got the interview was not my favorite, but applying was really fun.
If I could just also add, I know it's a lot of essays, it seems daunting, but I think one of the beauties about the program is it really is kind of the selection panel. They want the program to be a mosaic of, you know, the people we serve in California. So be authentic in writing your answers for it. They really do value the unique perspective each and every candidate brings when they apply to the fellowship. So yeah, be honest, be authentic. And I can tell you for a fact they definitely take that into consideration when they're narrowing down the names. And as far as the day-to-day process, I would just love to share, because I think I had a really fascinating piece of legislation to work on this year. And I know I definitely gave an earful to Jamie whenever I would stop by to his office about it. So when I started in Senator Cortese's office, Senator Cortese is the labor chair for Senate. I came in studying psychology, so I wanted to specialize in health policy education, which I did get to do, but kind of like Aldo mentioned, you realize that there are issue areas you didn't even know you'd find interesting. And for me, workers' compensation and workplace violence were one of those areas. So I got tasked with staffing a bill, SB 553, that ended up kind of taking on a life of its own through the legislative process. It was a bill designed to prevent workplace violence. But as it went through this process, I kind of got to see this real time too. The media coverage of the bill shifted, kind of in consensus with what was happening with retail theft in San Francisco. So I remember the day, me and my press secretary, we left the office it was probably 8 p.m. because the hours go all over the place, but if you're on this call, you're wired differently. So you'll be fine with the change in hours. You won't even think about it. Yeah, so we left the office and we wake up the next morning and we see a comment request from a paper at 4 a.m. asking us to clarify about our bill. You shouldn't be working until 4 a.m. unless it's like into session or something. So obviously me or our comm secretary did not respond. With that, they ended up running the story on the bill that grossly just mischaracterized it. And then from there, media coverage just got super polarized on the bill. Fast forwarding a bit, our member got loads of death threats. I know I got a few myself. There was hate mail. There were a few protests where we had to be kind of evacuated out by the sergeants during the protests. And this was all because of a bill that had been misrepresented by media. So our day-to-day was clarifying this to concerned constituents, because at the end of the day, that's what they are. They're just trying to interact with the members they voted to represent them. So that's kind of just a small snippet of, you never really know what you're getting into. And at the end of the day, we're working on stuff that is affecting, you know, the lives of our constituents. For them, small business owners, a few of them thought we'd be legislating a bill that would let people walk into their store and take whatever they want. But when you would sit on the phone and talk with them, go through the bill, because again, you'll be equipped with the tools to read a bill properly, to look at its conception through writing, work with Ledge Council. It's very rewarding. So just wanted to share that.
To answer your initial question, Kathy, I think the hardest part about the essays was just getting started. A lot of us, especially if you're just coming out of college, like we're so used to writing essays with fluffy language and hitting that limit. Now we're asked to talk about ourselves in 2 pages. And for me, that was very difficult. So I had to learn how to write in the most concise way, while still being able to address kind of what I thought was important to share. Of course, we're all resources for you, and so I'll more than happy to share my email at the end, and I'm happy to brainstorm ideas with you. But I would just say, if you haven't even started writing the essays, that's totally fine. Just start brainstorming. What are the qualities? What are the things that I want to share about the essay on both prompts? And then after that, even right now, I'm working on like graduate school applications, and so my essays, like I've already written them, but then I just continuously go back because there's always room for improvement. But at the end of the day, you will be able to say, okay, this is what I'm confident in submitting, as long as I hit some of the points that I want. So make sure you make a list of like, what is it that I want the selection committee to know about me, and talk to others about it, because there's some things that I mentioned in my application that I thought I shouldn't maybe share, but they do matter. They show a lot about who you are, and the directors want to know who you are as a person, not that, oh yeah, this person has policy experience, so let's get them to Sacramento. They want to know why you want to come to Sacramento, why the assembly or whatever different program is going to help you with your career goals and with some of the changes that you want to make. Some of the day-to-day, again, it's absolutely an amazing experience. Every day I would wake up and come to work, I was happy because this is exactly the work that I enjoyed doing. So as I mentioned, I staffed a member on specific issue areas. That didn't just mean that if my member was carrying a bill that hit that issue area, I was working on it. A lot of it was, I come into my office, and what's really neat is the whole calendar year is planned out for you. So you know the big deadlines, you know what's coming. Your job is to prepare for those. So during the busiest time of the year, you're constantly keeping track of where your boss is. They might be in one committee and then they have to go to the next committee and present another bill. So if my bill is up in that committee, I have to make sure that my boss has everything that they need to be successful in that committee. Write up the talking points for the bill that I'm staffing, the frequently asked questions that they might get asked, checking in with other staff in other offices to make sure, hey, where is your boss on this bill? Does your boss like the bill? If they don't like the bill, what are the concerns? I'm able to take those concerns to my boss and say, hey, we need to have a conversation about this with either member to member or me with Ledge Council, and kind of figure out what there's, again, always room for improvement. And even with your bills, there's constantly folks that are reaching out to you because they're the ones who are dealing with some of these issues, right? A bill can be proposed by either the member, by staff, or folks who are actually doing work in this space, right? So if you work in healthcare, people will reach out to you if you staff health and say, hey, my name is X, I work with this organization. We're really interested in this health bill. We want to come talk to you about it. So a lot of me being in the office was people know what issue areas you're working on, and the people who are representing those organizations are going to reach out and say, hey, although we know you work on local government for your boss, there's a bill that's coming up in local government, and the city of Los Angeles is really interested in supporting the bill. We want to come talk to you about why it's important. And so then you'll take those meetings and you'll meet with them and you'll ask the questions, because a lot of the bills that were coming up, like I was able to read them, but I didn't understand the whole picture or the whole story. So when other folks would come in, they're like lobbyists, they're people who are dealing with this issue. So that was my opportunity to say, hey, I don't know what this piece of the bill means. Hey, how does this bill affect this population? And I was able to gather all that information and be that source of information between the people that are coming to talk to you about the bill and my boss. Because again, the assembly member, if you're working the assembly, we're looking at all the bills in my issue area for 80 members. So I have to, and my boss doesn't have time to look at every single one. And so that's why we have this structure where it's like the chief of staff, and then you have your ledge director, and they're the person who you're going to be really working with if you do the assembly or the Senate to kind of manage the bill package. And so it's a lot of, right now we're in the swing space, but when my boss would have committee, we'd go over to committee. They would have all their materials. And again, just following the boss around and making sure that they had everything that they needed to be successful. There was one particular meeting that I took one day where literally every single person in the room was a former fellow. So it was really cool. One of the things that I like about the fellowship is that everyone knows the network and kind of the prestige of the fellowship. Like once you're in the assembly, everyone knows that if you're an assembly fellow, like you were vetted, right? You have your college degree, they know that you have potential to do really great work. And so what I really enjoyed was that as I was going through the process, as much as I was maybe nervous about making sure I did everything correctly and getting a hang of the process, if there was ever a moment where I made a mistake, I know that my office and that other folks had like that grace to say, this is part of their fellowship and they're learning and this is their first year. So there's a lot of patience, and that takes off like a ton of the pressure in learning the entire process. So if you're part of the fellowship program, if you make a mistake, like, you know that it's a learning experience. People are going to help you out. People are willing to help you out. When people hear that you're a fellow, they want to reach out to you and say, hey, let's go grab coffee. Maybe I can share something that will be beneficial to you. And it's just a lot of figuring out what you don't know and then saying, I want to know about that because now I'm interested in it. And so everything that I was able to do this year was just a learning experience. But of course, it was with the mission that your boss has legislation and you want to make sure that you prepare them for it. And that means, again, doing talking points, meeting with stakeholders about different bills, and then being able to be that source of information between the office and your boss.
I want to just make a comment on something that Aldous said at the very beginning of his talk about the essays when you use the word concise. And that's one thing. Our essays are intentionally short. We give you 2 to 3 pages, and it seems like not a lot to talk about yourself or to express your opinion, but legislative writing, governmental writing is concise. You fellows are expected to take really complex things like a piece of legislation and summarize it for the boss in a paragraph. Right, or you'll take an executive order that maybe 90 pages or some, and you're digesting that for the public in a page or 2. So we're intentionally keeping the essays short for you because we want to see that you can communicate who you are and what you care about, but in a concise manner, in a way that's readable and digestible. So it's very different than academic writing. And I think that's a challenge for applicants and for fellows. That's one of the things that you have to learn. A lot are recent college graduates, so you're used to writing, 20-page papers, 30-page papers, and now we're asking you to do things in a very concise way, and that is intentional. That is part of the training that you do receive in the fellowship program. Okay, and then I'm going to open it up one last time for a question. If not, it looks like Jenna wanted to make a comment. Is that right?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, it's getting dark in here. I just thought I would go over a few things that as we got closer to application deadline last year, I got a lot of questions about. So mostly about letters of recommendation. So if you're applying to more than one of the Capital Fellows programs, you may use the same recommenders, but you do need to send a request for letters of recommendation from each of those individual applications, which means your recommender is going to receive multiple requests, and they do need to fill each of those out individually. Now they can use the same letter of recommendation, that's fine. It needs to be a PDF version. It's all through SurveyMonkey, it's pretty quick. But some recommenders got a little confused about that last year, because they're like, why can't I just do it once? I like to explain it by saying, imagine you had a file folder for each application. If you only put the letter of recommendation in one file folder, the other files aren't going to have it. And if they need any help with explaining that, you can have them reach out to me at calstudies@csus.edu. The other thing that people asked a lot about with the letters of recommendation is if those had to be complete before they could submit their application, and they do not. So once you are done with everything you need to do on your side and you have sent in your requests for letters of recommendation, you can go ahead and submit your application, and your recommenders will still have until their deadline to submit their letters of recommendation, and you will be able to track and see that if they've been done or not within the SurveyMonkey Apply system. So I think that's all I wanted to go over. Those 2 questions I got a lot. And also recommenders actually have an additional week after the deadline to submit their letters of recommendation. So your applicant deadline is December 4th by 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. They have 1 week after that to get their letters in. So I would definitely highly encourage you to get your requests for letters of recommendation out as soon as possible. because the people you're sending them to tend to get a lot of those. So you want to give them as much lead time as possible. And that's a pretty easy thing for you to do. It's really just a matter of typing in their email and a little message. So I just wanted to cover those few things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenna. Well, we are coming up on time, so I do want to thank everyone for joining us and for your interest in the Assembly Fellow. I'm sorry, for the Capital Fellows programs, for all of them. I do want to thank our presenters. Thank you so much to our former fellows for taking time out of your busy workday to join us. Should mention that they are all now working professionals in different branches of government. So thank you for joining us in our service to the people of California. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to the programs and to find us on the website. So thank you all very much. And thank you again to Jamie and Jenna for joining us. Take care, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're
All right.
done.
Oh, let me stop recording.